You're driving home late after a heavy storm. The road is familiar. You've taken it hundreds of times before, and tonight it looks almost the same, except for the sheet of water spreading across the asphalt ahead. Your headlights scatter across the surface, turning the road into a dull mirror. It doesn't look deep. Maybe 6 inches, maybe less. The car in front of you made it through. Another vehicle coming the other way just passed without stopping. Your brain performs a quick calculation. Keep steady speed, maintain momentum, get through the water before the engine has time to struggle. Your tires enter the floodwater, and for the first second, everything feels normal. Then the steering wheel feels lighter than it should. Not dramatically, just enough to make you notice. The car no longer feels planted to the road. A sideways pressure pushes against the door panels, subtle at first, then stronger as the current presses against the chassis. You press the accelerator a little harder, expecting the tires to bite into the pavement and carry you forward. But the vehicle doesn't respond the way it should. The front end drifts. Then the entire car begins sliding sideways. And suddenly you realize something that most drivers discover too late. You are no longer driving through the water. The water is moving your car. Most drivers believe shallow floodwater is safe to cross if they keep moving. It isn't. Just 12 inches of moving water can begin pushing a car sideways. And once the tires lose traction, control disappears in seconds. The danger in floodwater isn't just depth, it's force. Drivers look at water and instinctively judge the situation by how deep it appears. If the tires aren't fully submerged, the brain assumes the vehicle still has control. But moving water doesn't behave like a puddle sitting on asphalt. It behaves like a horizontal river crossing the road, pressing against the side of your vehicle with constant force. 2 invisible mechanisms begin working against you the moment your tires enter the current. Hydrodynamic pressure, water pushing laterally against the body of the car. Buoyancy, water lifting the vehicle from underneath. Drivers assume their car's weight keeps them safe, but floodwater doesn't need to lift the entire vehicle to take control. It only needs to reduce tire grip enough for the current to start pushing. And once the tires stop gripping the pavement, the car stops being a vehicle. It becomes a floating object in moving water. A typical passenger vehicle weighs between 3,000 and 4,000 pounds. That sounds heavy enough to resist moving water, and that assumption is exactly why drivers underestimate the danger. Cars are built to move forward on pavement, not to resist a sideways force applied across a wide surface area. When floodwater flows across a roadway, it behaves like a moving sheet of mass. The current pushes horizontally against the side panels, tires, and undercarriage of the vehicle. At the same time, water flowing beneath the chassis begins creating buoyant lift, the same physical principle that allows ships to float. The moment buoyancy lifts even part of the vehicle, tire friction drops dramatically. Tires depend on pressure against asphalt to maintain grip. Reduce that pressure, and traction weakens fast. Now the car is no longer anchored to the road. It's partially floating, while a lateral current continues pushing against it. This is why flood safety research consistently shows the same pattern. Around 12 inches of moving water can start carrying small vehicles. Around 18 inches can move SUVs and pickup trucks. Once the car begins drifting sideways, steering input becomes almost meaningless. At that moment, physics has already taken control. The first mistake drivers make is trusting momentum. The idea feels logical. If you keep moving fast enough, the car will push through the water before anything goes wrong. Many drivers even accelerate as they enter floodwater, believing speed will carry them safely across before the engine or tires have time to fail. But speed changes the physics. As the vehicle moves forward, water piles up against the front bumper and hood, forming a temporary bow wave. That wave increases upward pressure beneath the chassis, lifting the front tires just enough to weaken traction. Now, imagine approaching a flooded intersection and deciding to keep your speed steady. The water looks shallow. The road looks familiar. For a moment, the car still feels stable. Then the steering wheel loosens. The front tires begin to float. This is exactly how a driver named Daniel lost control during a storm in Texas. His car rotated sideways in the current before he understood what was happening. And once a vehicle turns sideways in moving water, the current takes it. The second mistake is trusting what your eyes tell you. Floodwater hides the road. From the driver's seat, The surface often looks smooth and shallow, especially at night when headlights reflect off the water like a mirror. The brain assumes the pavement underneath is still intact, but floodwater frequently erodes the roadbed long before drivers arrive. Asphalt can collapse, drainage channels can open, entire sections of pavement can be washed away while the water above remains calm and flat. Now, picture yourself approaching a familiar rural road after a storm. The water spreads across the lane, but it doesn't look deep. You've driven this road for years. Nothing about it feels dangerous. So, you enter the water, the front tires roll forward, then the pavement disappears. The car drops into a hidden channel beneath the surface. And in that moment, you realize the real danger was never the water you could see. It was the road that was already gone. The third mistake is believing a heavier vehicle makes you safer. This assumption is especially common among drivers of SUVs and pickup trucks. The reasoning feels solid: more weight, higher ground clearance, larger tires. A vehicle built for rough terrain should handle shallow floodwater without trouble, but floodwater doesn't challenge the weight of the vehicle. It removes the traction that keeps that weight anchored to the road. As moving water flows beneath the chassis, buoyancy begins lifting the vehicle just enough to reduce pressure on the tires. It doesn't need to raise the car very far. Even a small reduction in contact weakens friction between rubber and pavement. Now picture a driver named Mike easing his pickup into a flooded road. At first, the truck feels solid. The engine pulls forward, the tires roll through the current. Then the steering wheel lightens. The current presses against the broad side of the truck, and suddenly the rear begins sliding. Within seconds, the vehicle rotates sideways in the flow. Mass didn't protect the truck. It simply gave the water more surface to push. The fourth mistake is hesitation. Most drivers don't realize the danger immediately. The first signals are subtle. The steering feels lighter than normal. The car drifts slightly before correcting. Water pushes harder against the doors than expected. For a moment, the brain searches for a simple explanation. Maybe the pavement is uneven. Maybe the tires slipped. So drivers wait. But floodwater moves faster than human decision-making. As the current continues pressing against the vehicle, traction weakens further, and the car begins to pivot with the flow. The engine may stall as water reaches the intake. Electronics flicker. Water rises along the door seals. Now the driver finally understands the situation is wrong. They try to reverse. But the tires are no longer gripping the road, and once the vehicle begins floating or drifting sideways, the decision to escape may already be too late. Flood accidents rarely begin with panic. They begin with confidence. Drivers see water across a familiar road, and the brain quickly fills in the missing information. You've driven here before. The road is usually safe. The water looks shallow. The mind compresses the risk into a simple decision. Keep moving and get through it. Under stress, the body releases cortisol, narrowing attention and speeding up judgment. The brain stops analyzing the environment and starts searching for the fastest solution. Forward, through the water. But floodwater punishes fast decisions. Because the environment is changing while the brain is trying to simplify it. And by the time the driver realizes the calculation was wrong, the vehicle is already in moving current. Once a vehicle begins drifting in floodwater, the situation deteriorates quickly. Steering inputs stop producing the expected response. The tires skim across the pavement with almost no grip, while the current continues pushing against the side of the car. The vehicle may begin rotating slowly, the headlights swinging away from the road and toward the darkness of deeper water. Engines stall when water reaches the intake. Electrical systems fail, interior lights flicker, and as water presses against the doors, the pressure outside grows stronger than the force you can push from inside. By this point, the driver is no longer controlling the vehicle. The current is. Floodwater doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care how familiar the road is, how powerful your engine is, or how heavy your vehicle feels when the tires are firmly on dry pavement. Moving water follows only one set of rules: pressure, buoyancy, and force. The moment those forces remove traction, control disappears. Drivers don't lose their vehicles because the water was deep. They lose them because the water was moving. That is the principle. If floodwater covers the road, the correct decision is already clear. Turn around. Share this warning so it reaches drivers before the next storm. One informed decision can prevent a fatal mistake.